Are you recording? Okay, well, so we're going to start again talking about WXEDM. This is an example on what the application looks like when there's a lot of windows open at the same time and it's locked. As you can see your application, you see all your window, but that's all you see. So just a reminder. So did you decide between yourself if you want to go dig into the code, if you want to talk about the replication that is under it, if you want to what? No? Nothing? Nobody? Nobody cares? Should we stop now? Because my voice is going anyway, so if we stop, I'm good. Let's do code. Oh, I had a rousing endorsement for going into the code. Okay. Which part of the code would interest you first? The login? Okay. You want the login with the locking system or just the login? Okay, let's do that. So we're going, you see that here? By the way, this window is the same window that we use when you originally log in the project. However, it tells this time that WXEDM was automatically locked, and I have to change that because it could have been manually locked too, so I have to remove the automatically. Keep forgetting. To unlock it, please enter the same credential than initially. So if I enter anything else than what I did before, it won't work.
You can't start with new credentials.
No.
You have to make a new instance of the program.
Yes. The reason for that is that the new user may not have the same permission than the old one, which means that at that point I will have to go through all the windows, all the documents, everything to see if he has access to that or not. So I decided that was just a waste of time for a case that is going to happen very rarely, in fact, and be sure that somebody would not this way access something that I forgot to lock by a programming error. So yes, at that level you have to enter the exact same thing than the first time, otherwise you cannot. Now here you have a close button. So what you can do is come here and close the damn thing. And I did not protect it at this point. I'm not sure if it's a good idea or not, because basically I just lost the work of somebody else right there because it didn't do any saved as usual generally do, you know how it goes. So that could be minimized, this problem could be minimized by having automatic saves and Sandbox implementation everywhere. Are you familiar with the Sandbox principle, everybody? No? You want me to talk about it? Yes? Nothing? Come on guys, wake up, tell me something. Talk about Sandbox, okay. The idea of a sandbox is that you're going to save somewhere in the sandbox something without any control. And by that I mean that a form very often will have condition that will allow it to be saved or not. By example, a user form will not be saved if the password is not strong enough. That's a condition. You cannot create a user with a weak password. However, if you're in the process of creating 3 different users and the phone rings and this and that and the other, you need to close windows and they are partially filled in and all that. In most programs, you're going to lose your data, which is bad. Losing data is always bad. So in that case, what do? Well, instead of losing the data, you write it in a sandbox, and that sandbox can be anything. It can be, in my case, what I'm doing is I'm writing that in my parameter file as a memo text with all the information in it, and then I can come back and refill my form with all these values that have not been controlled. That's all it's going to do. It's not going to be into the main file, never, because otherwise it will crash queries and controls everywhere else, so you never put it at the right place. You put it in your sandbox, and you can play with it however you want. That's why it's called a sandbox. It is extremely powerful. It is something that you can do on a timer. So every 10 seconds, every 30 seconds, every minute, whatever the delay you want, I don't know. So whatever the delay you want, you have your okay, who's calling somebody in Morse here? Okay, so you can have your delay set as you want, depending on your application, and you store your stuff in the sandbox. If there's a crash, you start the application. You look, is there something in the sandbox? Yes. You have a form that were not closed properly. Do you want to reopen them? Plum, 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 populate the fields. You're done. Your user is very, very happy. Extremely simple, very easy to implement. Not available in that for now. Could be done quite easily, just no time once again. Remember that I take orders. You just have to pay for my time, that's all. It's easy enough. So if you need something in that and you don't have the time or the knowledge to implement it, I can do it. It's just you will pay for my time because you need it now. That's the only difference. So once you have your sandbox in place, all the problem that we have with the login and closing the whole application goes away, because, well, everything was saved in the sandbox. Once the original user comes back, he has a message saying you have a 3 document, 5 user form, and 7 search window open. Do you want to reopen them? And he can even have a list of all that and check whatever he want open, and bloop, 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 bloop. Because we have a multi-everything UI, we can open all that without any problem. So that becomes something that is really even more powerful. So currently, the close button just closed everything. No control. There were changes, too bad. You just didn't have to go to the lavatories. That's your problem. Or you just had to click the save button. Now, it could be also possible at that level to say, well, you cannot log in instead of somebody else, but you can log in to close. That's also a possibility. And we could even have at that level the possibility to record who's closing somebody else's application and send a little message to the supervisor saying, okay, well, there were 5 unsaved forms in that thing, and they were all Robert forms, and it's John who closed the damn thing. So, do you want to have a look? All that is possible. There are different scenarios. It depends if you want to be proactive or punitive. It's it's not the same thing at all. So we are saying the lock system. Are you with us, John? Okay, perfect. I'm going to use that and try to find, yeah, it's there. And I'm going to undo this. So, as I was telling you earlier, all the lock functions are in the collection of global procedure called CPR windows, and they all start with the family of function lock. So whenever you want to do some lock thing, you type lock, and you have the and you have and you have the list of function that is going to pop up. Lock come down, lock del expire, locks force, and so on and so forth. So I'm a big fan of the auto-completion system. I really like it. So one way to really use it is to prefix all your function by their family. This way you find them very easily. Of course, you have to use the right family name, otherwise it won't work. So let's see the whole logic of the thing. Well, clearly, the first thing for the user is the login window. The login window is called originally from inside the project here. That's in the project init. Somebody has a gun? We can kill it. It seems to be really suffering. It's called product endorsement. That's what you're saying. Okay. So what is the logic, in fact, in the project init code? That's a good place to start. In the project init code, the first thing that you will find is information. So, nation English, and that is the whole protection, anti-debug example and information. There does not need to have this call here because it is fully automatic. This is a secondary layer, that's all. That is in French. I apologize about that. And the reason for that, I told you, is that I did not have the time to translate the whole component, just the documentation for now. This is going to get translated in the probably next 2 weeks, and the full protection component will be then available in English. And if you find any French screen that we forgot, you let me know. It will be much faster to have it translated than you have usually. So that is originally the different things that you you do for the protection.
Question, Chris.
Yes.
Slightly up above where you are, there's the word local, which left me a little confused since I thought everything you declared in this section of code here was global. And then later you do global, so what happens? What does that local do?
That local allows me to create this this variable here as local to the project initialization code. They are not global to the project. That's that keyword. Yes, in that area, if you do not specify anything, then everything is global. However, you may need variable right here to do something that you don't want to have afterwards for any region. That's the case here. So I'm doing a local, declaring my little work variable here, using them for the security system, and then global, and everything afterwards is global.
I presume the same will work in the initialization code of the window.
Absolutely. Yes.
Temporarily.
Yes. Anytime you have something that is the default, whether it's the default is local or the default is global, you can inverse the situation with the keyword and then go back to the initial with that. So that's true everywhere. And that's quite practical because there are other places in the code where I'm going to do the exact same thing. And if I don't want to have this beautiful warning telling me that the local ICQ is overwriting the global ICQ, each time and say ignore the warning, it's normal. I just do that local here and I'm good to go. So once we have managed the security in the process here, we have this, and that also is a little trick that you should know about, so it's a good thing that we're here. The Sandbox component is managed with a license, and I bought a license of that for my personal use. You are not getting the license from me. I don't have the right to give away the license number, of course. So in order to be able to easily use it and not forget to remove it each time I publish it, I used that little trick here, this extern fMyDocumentProfessional datatail gembox license.txt. The extern keyword is something that we are not using often, yet it is quite powerful. Generally, well, and the extern keyword has two syntaxes that have nothing to do with each other, which is quite confusing. In one syntax, and that's not the one that is here, you're saying extern and a word, whatever word, and it tells the compiler that at the time of the execution, that name will mean something. By whatever mean, it's not his problem. You're telling him, don't worry, at the compilation time, when we're executing, you will know what that is. That is generally a variable that is declared somewhere else, and that will always be available at that time. However, in that syntax, when you have the quotes unquote around the string, it means that what is inside this is a file, a text file somewhere on the disk. When you say a file without any thing, it's in the project directory. When you give a full path, then it goes and finds the file that is there, and it includes the content of the file at the place where you have the extern. So any code that you want to include and not have in your project, you can do like that. Any W language code, any constant, any variable, anything. You will get an error because you don't have that file. That file is basically a line of W language saying my license equal blah 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 blah. Okay. What I'm doing here is putting inside the Sandbox license variable, which is my variable, the free limited key, which is the test license that you can use for free, and that has some limitation in the processing. When you're processing a document with that, it can work only on the first, from the top of my head, I'm going to say 20 paragraph of a document. So it's going to extract 20 paragraph, it's going to replace in 20 paragraph, it's never going to go any further than that. And after that, it's going to start an error, and you have a way to manage that in order to intercept it and be able to work on your demo. So for me on my machine, this line is in fact replacing the value in there by my real license, and I work on the full document. In your case, you don't have the license, you're going to be in the free limited key case. When you buy a license, you just change the path of that, or you put it in the same place, and you're good to go. The extern WinCons WL, this is a file that is coming with WinDev, WinCons WL, and it is a declaration of all the constants that you can need for API call, standard Windows API call. So in there you will have the WM move, WM right click, WM left click, and all these wonderful constants that Microsoft is using in its API calls. These two things are coming directly from the replication system, so I'm not going to go into that for now. If we decide to talk about the replication, then by all means. We are then declaring a user object. I have 4 or 5 global to the project objects, and I heard yesterday, I learned that a real programmer would never declare global objects. It's really sad. I'm a false programmer. So let's continue. Yes, you will hear things like that. Absolutely, there's no problem. Some people are sure that there's only one truth in the world, and one day they will grow up, or they'll die, whatever comes first. So I'm declaring a user object, and I'm going after that in the whole project use the functions that are in the user class. After that starts the beautiful constant section specific to the program, and you can see that I have quite a few. They are organized by type of functions. And you can see once again that I'm commenting as much as I can so that I know what's going on.
Question on that brings, I have struggled with trying to understand the enumeration variable.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that these are enumerations.
They're not.
As constants.
No, they're not. Well, constants are just something that is living between the time you code and the time you compile. At the time you compile, you are in fact replacing that in your code by 2. So that's the end of it. Now, an enumeration is a structure list of value. That is completely different. Here, each time I have one value. An enumeration is you need red, blue, green, and you have all this value in it, and you are able to work with it. It's really more an object than anything else. So it has a number of property and function that are the enumeration object and a number of values. So if you look at all the modern variables, type of variables and their function, and you think a little bit how they work, you will realize that under it, there's a class each time. Each time you're declaring a variable, in fact, you're creating an object, and this object has a number of property or method, function, whatever you want to call them, that goes with it. That's exactly the principle of the class. And you look at enumeration, you look at email variable, you look at, you've seen that they added there an API variable. Before that, you had an API call with parameter. Now you have an API variable. And all that is object programming that they're adding to their procedural programming they had before. So that's all. Is that a little clearer? Or did I just add another layer of confusion?
Well, I'm half better off than I was.
Okay, that.
As time goes, trying to figure out, okay, what instance would you use an enumeration? I understand the concept. Substitution.
You're going to use an enumeration when you need the functions that goes with enumeration. There's a number of functions that goes with that, and when you need that, you're using an enumeration. Otherwise, this is just to clarify the code. That has nothing to do with anything else. Well, an enumeration is something that is going to control. You can say, is that value in my enumeration? And things like that. You are controlling that something is inside a list of authorized things. Yes?
Put it another way, constant is actually a value for a variable. Where enumeration
Is a variable.
is a list of restrictions. That means if you say foreground color and enumerator is red, yellow, your only choices is those three. Okay, so enumeration restricts the variable itself. Is an enumeration, will only allow those. Where constant, you can actually put a file path, right, equals that, and you can use up two, right? Okay, where enumeration doesn't know.
Enumeration, we have value like red.
Yes. That's what the components.
You would say, okay, I want to change the value, it would only allow you to change it to other choices.
So it's red, green, RGB, right? And you only can choose those three. That means it kind of restricts you more. It enforces some rules.
I don't want to get us off track.
I'm not sure there's a track, but... So, at that point, we have all my constants that are declared here because that's the place you have to declare constant. You don't have a lot of places where you can do that. This thing is driving me nuts. I'm moving around. It doesn't look like it's me.
It could be anything between your mic and the receiver. This thing here. This is vibrating.
It's vibrating. A power a power pack is vibrating, guys. I don't want to frighten anybody, but I don't think that's normal. I don't think it's supposed to contain anything vibrating.
Some cell phone between the mic and the receiver is interfering. And so when you're moving around, you're changing the angle of repose between your mic and the receiver. Look at these guys.
Okay, let's try again. Okay, at that. Team, help! This thing is bugging me. So at that point, we are starting to do all the general management, which is, okay, where is going to be the log file, start the log mode as logging into the file, or this kind of beautiful thing. We don't care about that. This is the new object that is managing all the parameter settings and the function that goes with it. This is the initialization of the project, standard stuff with my standard replication system. Then we have the initialization of the file directory, changing the nation to what is in the INA file, because the user can select that. Declaring the user-defined replication, which is inheriting of the standard replication, which is inheriting of the standard database management, which is inheriting from the error management, which and so on and so forth. So we have this in fact a whole list of functions that is now available. We create or load the local database ID. Remember when I was telling you that in the security system for the user, we have in the all the main, the important files record, we have the GUID of the local database, always. And we are, in fact, comparing the GUID of the local database in the user record to the one in all the main records. If it's not the same, somebody is trying to hack my database, or it's just doing some very piss poor file management. All the things is the INA file existing. If not, it means that the project has not been initialized yet. It's the first run. And we are opening the init wizard internal window inside the shell for internal window that we were talking earlier about in a specific mode that goes with the first run.
Try a different mic, I guess. I don't think it's what the problem.
Okay, we're trying another microphone. We don't think it's a problem, but we're 1 2 1 2 1 2. Okay, a little less close. Okay, good for everybody. Okay, let's do this. So this is the opening, in fact, of the wizard, initialization wizard, that is going to ask the user in which language you want to work, what kind of database, and so on and so forth. So you have all that example available. And if at that point the INA file still doesn't exist, we end the program because there's a problem. If the INA file already existed, it means that the init wizard was already run, and we don't need to run it automatically again. At that point, that's the beginning really of the security system. We are testing if admin should we create. So are we in the one and only situation where we should create an admin user? So what is this one and only situation? And that's where you really need to be careful in order not to let somebody hack your system. We are doing a list of control in there and saying basically listing the files, and for each file looking if there is already a record in it. If all the files are empty, then we are in the situation where it's a new database and we are allowed to create a new administrator record. If we're doing that for all the files except for the help file, well, because the help file is supposed to contain data before the user arrives, it's coming with the program, and the replication file, at that point the replication file always contains at least one record, which is the local user database. So if everything else is empty, then okay, we can create an administrator. So if that is the case, again, we are opening the user management window this time, still inside the shell for internal window, and we are creating in the mode admin create. So the main window is going to be used for regular creation, edit, all this kind of thing, deletion eventually. And also in a specific mode, which is the administrator creation. In that mode, the window is going to behave slightly differently. By example, the admin button is going to be pressed and you will not be able to unpress it. The active checkbox is going to be checked and you will not be able to uncheck it. And you will have to enter a username, a login, and a password, strong enough password as usual. You can only create, you cannot edit, you cannot list other user. At that point there's nothing else, so you just directly inside the window in creation mode, and you can just enter this information. Once you come back from there, there has to be a user. If there is no user at that point, then it means that you did not create a user. So what we do, we just open the login window, and if the login is not successful, we end the program. That's all. Okay, what's going on here? I'm freezing here. Now let's look at what's happening inside the login window. That is very, very small there. This is the login window. The login window has a lock button, but when you are login, it's not visible. The login window has that text right there that I need to modify, so I'm going to do it right now. Okay. That also is not visible when you are initially login. And these two fields and these two buttons, that's all. You enter the login, the password, there's nothing at that level at all. And in there you are checking if the application is locked, you're going out, and so on and so forth. And we start again. So we were on the valid button of the login window. This window is used in two cases. One is the initial login in the application, and the other is the delocking of the application or unlocking of the application. I'm not sure which one it is. Once it has been locked. So that's the first thing that we are looking at here, the first line. Because the whole locking system is managed in a collection of procedure, the flag saying if the application is locked or not is also in that collection of procedure, which is why it is cpr_windows.gcb app is locked. That's the name of the flag. So if you don't know my naming convention, for those who don't know, followed my best practice course, very quickly, there's always a prefix that tells me what I'm working against. Here it's a collection of procedure, and here it's a global to a collection of procedure boolean, GCB. When I see that, I always know that it is somewhere something of a certain type. So If it's false, it means that the application is not locked. We are in the initial login case. In that case, we are going to call the user class login procedure with the value that the user just entered in the EDTUS login and EDTUS pass fields. If that procedure returns true, then it means that everything was successful. The user is active, was found, is authorized, is, well, everything that you want to control is in the login function. At which point we are doing what we want that we should be doing. And this is, in this case, to set the user login with that value. Now, why am I doing it this way and not in the login function? Because if the login was successful in the login function, I could have saved that value immediately. Is alive? Yes? No idea? You want me to repeat the question? There's a little trick here. I have a login function in the user class, and if I arrive here, the login was successful. However, just after that, I am setting the user login in the class, and I definitely have done that in the login function. Yes? Absolutely not. It's for the session, it's not in the file. So, why am I doing things like that? Well, the login function can be used for several things. Here it is used to do the initial login. But you could absolutely have a point of sale application where some functions are not authorized to everybody, and you need to call a supervisor, and this supervisor will have to enter his username and password to log in and authorize just that function. So calling the login function does not mean that you are in fact logging in. You are just verifying. And this is where you're really setting that the current user is that one. In the case of the point of sale I was talking about, in here you would have, well, okay, the supervisor came and logged in. We have the right to do this function. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the right and would go back. So it is done in two steps because, once again, this is something that I'm using for several different purposes. Once the user login has been stored, we are closing the current window and continue in the project file. If we cannot log in, info user login or password error. And for those of you who are wondering why I'm not telling user login not found, record not found, password incorrect, user inactive, and all these beautiful things, it is because you do not want to give a hacker any type of information. So basically you're telling him bugger off, as Wolfgang would say, but you are not giving him any information, telling him, okay, it's the password wrong so that the login is correct. You don't want to do that ever for security questions. Now, in the other case, if the application was locked, so we are in the else case, we are first checking if the user login that is entered is the same that the one we saved right here. We have set user login here and login get, and that is inconsistent. I rename this function to have the same thing on both sides. If it's the same, then we are doing the login again to verify that the password match, everything is copacetic. And at that point, we are calling the lock restart function to restart the whole application. So, initial login and unlocking system at the same place. And that's all there is here. So at that point, we did log in. Okay, the user is okay, everything is good. We are creating the document object. That is, that line right here is 3 seconds because of all the statistics that we have to load. I can show them to you if you want to have a very good idea of what I'm talking about. Where is that thing? It's going to be in there. There you go. Look at that. I'm going to go in here. And then a little code. You see the scroll bar here? Okay, that's everything that is above that is the stats. So that's why it's taking 3 seconds to start. So 3 seconds of wait here, and we can start everything else. Another trick that I have to tell you about is that there is no first window declared here, and that is on purpose. I am opening several windows, one after the other, from the initialization code of the project. If at the same time I declare a first window, well, WinDev doesn't know what to do and starts at some point of opening the wrong window at the wrong time. So either you declare a first window here and everything is automatic, or you don't and you're in charge of opening whatever windows you need at that level. This is the lock delay function. The lock delay function, set delay. We already saw that before, so I'm not going to go into any detail, but it's just basically setting information somewhere. Then the lock start, which is the event. We talked about it. And you can see here, those are the constants that are coming from the winconst.wl file that is in the extern keyword we are talking about. We arrive here, we start the timer that does the countdown for the lock mechanism, and we open the first window. That is the first window. And that is everything that you need in the project to have the whole lock system work and the login work. After that, what's happening is that, well, this timer here is going to decrement your counter. When it reaches 0, it will call the lock function that will block all the window and open in model mode the login window once again, and we will be in that case here with that visible and that that case here that we just talked about, and that's it. There's nothing else. It's really checking on every window if there is a certain type of event, which is left click, right click, entry by the keyboard. If that is not happening in any of the windows of the program, then decrement the counter. As soon as one of these events is happening, reset the counter. And when the application is locked, you have the login window and you compare if you can restart or not. Principle is extremely... Okay? Questions? Yes, you want to look at the code of that? Okay. Well, it's right there. It's also in the CPR window collection of procedure, and it is all these functions. So we are going to look at it from the beginning, which is the opening of a window. So there are two ways of opening windows in that program. Either you do a plain open, and you are outside that system, So you need to know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. This is how the login window is managed, completely outside that system. For everything else, you're using that so that your UI is not locked and you can always go work on something else and open another user window, another contact window in the future, another email, another whatever, and work with 300 windows open at the same time and be very happy in that. So, when you open a window, what is happening? Window open, star. Now that is the first trick. We do not know how many parameters of what type of parameters are going to be passed to any given window. Because I don't need the same number of parameters for a Word document, for a user form, or for a search window. Okay? So we need to manage a variable number of parameters, and that is the syntax to do it. Here we're saying to that function, you're going to receive something, maybe, deal with it. And that is my code right after that is going to deal with it. Let's look at this declaration. And I'm going to give you another trick here. It's this. This is something that I learned the hard way, so it would be a good idea if you really understood that. There are three types of string mainly in WinDev. There are more than that, but for that situation there are three types. ANSI string, that you declare as my string is ANSI string. Unicode string, that you declare as my string is Unicode string. And I have no idea what type of string it will be at execution time string that you declare with is string. Did you get that? This is string here is the biggest trap that you can fall in. This is the reason why you always see on the forum, I don't understand, my code was working in the emulator and it doesn't work on my phone. Here, right here, is string is the reason. Is string means that at execution time, the string is going to be declared either as Unicode or as ANSI, depending on the current configuration. The current configuration while you are in test mode is exactly that. You go in project, configuration, current configuration, and you have a tab that nobody has ever seen before, which is called Unicode. And you go in there and you say, well, my string are ANSI or my string are Unicode, which is great. But when you create code that is supposed to work in a WinDev program in ANSI, on an Android device, which is Unicode, or in Java which you need to be extremely careful, because at the time when your code is executed in that particular project, the type of string may be completely different. So, how do you deal with that? Well, one way of doing that is to always specify the type of the string. Is ANSI string or is Unicode string? And this way you're sure what you're doing. However, your system is returning you one type of string and you have no control over that. Windows is always, when you ask something Windows is going to tell you something in ANSI. Android is going to speak to you in Unicode. iOS is going to speak to you in Unicode if you're lucky, in UTF-8 if you're not. So, that means that when you're using system functions like the F function that returns directory name or files, like internal function return the name of Windows or object of the project, you are going to receive from the same function either ANSI or Unicode. And that is very easily a big mess. What I'm doing in order to always know what I'm working against is I'm using 3 different prefixes for my variable, my string variable. If I declare variable as an ANSI string, it is going to be AS alias string is ANSI string. If I declare it as Unicode string, it is going to be US alias string is Unicode string. And if I don't specify because it is a system string, I am going to declare it as CCS alias string is string. CCS stands for current configuration string. That allows me in my code to always know that I'm sure what this is, and this is system, so I should always work in CCS strings the whole way up to the end. Now, the charter system in WinDev is good, but when I'm doing that, it is having hiccups. When you type something like that, it is going to add in front of it either AS or US, depending on your current configuration. Because for the system, it knows that the current configuration is ANSI. Therefore, a string is ANSI, except that the execution time, it won't be ANSI. So in my charter, the one that you have with that project called FH Charter, so that it doesn't bother you when you have your own, you have the 3 type of variable declare exactly that way: ANSI string prefix AS, Unicode string prefix US, and string alone, which they have in the type as CCS. But string alone, as declared here, is never using CCS by itself. You have to type it in, then to correct it, because it is adding that crap in it at least once. It is very, very, very tiresome to each time do that. But it is the only way to be sure that of the type of the string you're working against. It doesn't matter at all if you are only working in WinDev, only working in WebDev, or only working in Android. As soon as you start to use the same code in all environments, that's when you really need to take care of that. And because that's exactly what I'm doing with the replication and the electronic document management system, I need to take care of that. Of course, I sent that to PCSoft at the time I was working on the replication, so 1.5 years ago, and they sent it to the developer team as a very good suggestion. So maybe in 23, 24, there's a chance, I don't know. Well, in 21 they are announcing something that I told them about in 18, so we're on the good path. Yes, you had a question?
I discussed with you others on the attach routine that said
Yeah, it's not a buffer, it's a buffer. A buffer is not a... Mm-hmm.
Does that take care of the
No, because a buffer is not a string at all. A buffer is a blob, if you prefer. It's a binary. It's it.
But I mean, if you're comparing two
Well,
strings that you don't know what's in, not strings, but
well, if you,
hatches.
no,
I know you didn't make hatches,
mm-hmm.
but if you're comparing two hatches, made buffers,
Oh yeah,
take care of that problem.
yes. If you put some binary value in a buffer, another binary value in another buffer, and you compare them, it absolutely. However, if you put an ANSI string in a buffer and a Unicode string in another buffer and you compare them, even if visually the string are the same, the result will be false.
What's going to be, what can you say in the buffer? You say that in a file, you say that it's a blob,
Yes.
not as a string.
No. The content of a buffer is binary, which means that you can have the value 0 in it. 0 is end of string. So if you have any case like that, it's exactly the same. They're saving directly the result of the hash. The first 0 that you encounter is the end of the string, and you're losing the information that is after that. So the next time when you're going to compare in memory, it won't work. Mm. If it's anything, it means that it can be a file or something like that. Then it's a binary memo. If it's if it's binary, it's a binary memo. If you want to store a file, an external object, it's a binary memo. Now, if it's a text file, it's a binary memo. If it's an image, it's a binary memo. Now, if you want to store the content of a text file, it's a text memo because it's just a string. But the text file is going to contain not only the content, the text content, but also the name of the file, the size of the file, and all this wonderful crap saying it's a file that is in UTF-8 or Little Indian, Big Endian, and all this kind of wonderful thing that people smart has thought, I'm sure, at some point. Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't know the size of the string and then mm-hmm. If you declare as a string of 55, yes, whether you use it or not. Right. So if I think it's going to be 206, mm-hmm. am I better off just saying it's a memo? Because then if I only put in 19 characters in there, yeah, the differences are that in a text memo you can now finally have an index, but it is limited at the first, I'm going to say something wrong, I guess here, 50 characters of the memo, I'm not sure, or 100, something like that. So you can create a key on the first n character of a memo string. However, if you have a 250 string inside your record directly, you can have a key on the whole field, the 250. So it really depends on what you need to do with it. Yes, it's going to be more efficient on the standpoint of the size of the data on disk if you're using a memo when you have a lot of time empty thing or very small things, but you won't be able to index it the same way. So considering the price of a big hard drive these days, I would say I don't care. Now, I care about something where every time I'm losing space. For example, my GUID currently is not optimum. I am thinking of several ways of dividing the size of the GUID as stored by, I think, 6, something like that. So it would be quite a big thing on a big number of records. So I'm thinking about this kind of thing, but for the text string, there may be a case where it's one answer and maybe a case where there's another. I don't have a definite answer, sorry. So our strings in this case are CCS. And why? Because look at their name, alias string, return alias, window name. This clearly is going to contain information returned by WinDev about the current object, whether it is a window, its alias, or things like that. And therefore, depending on where this code is going to be executed, whether it is on mobile or Windows, well, the type of the string is going to be different. What are we doing? We are first checking that we have something, one parameter at least, because, well, it's very difficult to open a window when you don't have the name of the window. So if you don't have at least one parameter with the name in it, that's not good. Because we are working on a multi-window UI, the name of the window is not enough. Open 5 times the search window, the name is always the same. Therefore, when you want to close the search window number 3, you're kind of in trouble because you don't know how to identify it. So in a case like that, we are not working with the window name, we are working with what is designed exactly for that case, which is the window alias. And the window alias is a property of the window. By default, it's going to be the window name, the same value exactly. So if you do an open, it will be the same value. But if you do the kind of magic that we're going to do here, you're going to have a different value for each and every window of your UI, and that will allow you to precisely identify which window is what. So what are we doing? We build the alias name if needed. If there is already an alias, then the string in the first parameter is of that type, alias equal window name. Why is that? Well, if you do an open child, there are at least two different syntaxes. If you do an open child, the first parameter is going to be the window name, or it's going to be a string with that in it, alias equal, and you put whatever you want. Alias equal window name. So you put the alias that you want here and the window name. So that means that our procedure here needs to be able to either give the window an alias on the fly automatically, or accept a specific alias sent by the calling code. And that's what we're doing right here. So I'm checking first if there is an equal in my parameter, which means that it would be this equal here. If there is not one, then I'm increasing my window alias rank. This is just a little counter that is containing 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and so on and so forth each time I'm opening a window. And I am never decrementing it. Therefore, I always going to have a new alias for a new window. That's all. I'm creating the alias name, and the alias is WX EDM alias, so that if you're using also alias somewhere else, you're not going to walk on my feet by using whatever you are using, and the rank. We are adding the equal because we need that syntax, and then we are getting the window name here. So what we're doing here is preparing that and extracting this information on the side. Now, if there was already an equal, we are extracting the first part and putting it in the return alias, and extracting the second part and putting it in the window name, and we have what we need. Now, if we are using the regular open system, that's the place where we would have our open child or open sister. However, we saw that if we do that, we have a GPF. So instead, we are going to put inside my queue and it is right here, the value of everything that we need to pass. Now, for that we need to pass a number of informations, and because of that we're working with a structure, and this structure contains the date time at which the window was open, so that later in management we know which window was open when, and we can do whatever we need with it. It contains the alias of the window as either calculated here or extracted here. It contains the name of the window, same thing, either calculated or extracted. It is also containing, for debug purposes, the calling process, and that is something that you're getting with the debug info function. I want the element calling process. So I know that this window was desired by that window, and I always know what's going on. And the status of the window is going to be active. And we're going to see later what we're doing with that. At that point, we are adding that structure to an array, which is global to the collection of procedure dynamic array windows. So in our procedure that manages the window, we have what? An array of windows. I could absolutely have used an object and a class to manage that completely. I just wanted to show you that yes, classes are beautiful. Classes, if you don't use classes, you're not a real programmer. However, you can basically do the same thing without classes. It is absolutely possible. Yes, at some point I get a little pissed off by people who are kind of traditionalist in any possible ways. Just don't do that. I don't know why. So, here what we have is a collection of procedure with a few variables in it, which is basically a class without inheritance. And in there we have an array, and that array is a dynamic array of structure. And that structure is right here, contains different type of information. Okay, at that point we are going to do some real magic. Diaparam is a dynamic array of variants. Yes. Okay. Well, we'll restart tomorrow and at the next step. Now, my next problem. Somewhere I have an array of windows. Okay. And that array of windows at any point is going to allow me to, by example, close all windows or open one window, because those are the ones that are going to be displayed in the list of windows and all that. That was what I was doing here. I was telling the system that I'm putting that in the array of windows. But the window is not open yet. It's not. Hasn't been opened. It's just been stored in the list of windows that we need to manage. Now we need to pass the information to the main window in order for this window to really be open physically. And for that, I'm using a queue. I told you that it's basically a FIFO pile. So you're adding stuff in it on one side, and the other side is looking at the beginning, using it, removing it, using it, removing it, using. So you can have, in fact, 3 different windows asking to open a new window at basically the same time. All that goes into the queue before the main window has the time to open anything. And the main window is going to look in there, oh, open this one, open that one, open this one, nothing else to do. If you have a complex UI, you can have 5, 10, 20 things waiting to be done one at a time, cleanly by the main window. So we are going to put something in the queue. But the something is going to be completely variable because, well, here we're opening windows. We don't know the number of parameters and we don't know the type of parameters. We cannot just give strings or anything like that. Hence the use of variants. We don't know the number of parameters. And clearly the number of parameters we have to send when opening a window or when closing a window or when refreshing a window are going to be completely variable. Which is why it is a dynamic array of variant. Okay, there's a method to my madness, don't worry. So here I'm declaring a variable which is a dynamic array of variant. That is basically a stuff of stuff. Okay? I don't know how many of them there's going to be in the array, and I don't know what type of them is going to be in the array. In other language, they will call that a pointer on an array of pointers on objects. It's stuff of stuff. Don't care. So we declare the variable, and then here we're just going to add in it all the stuff we have to pass to the main window. And the first thing that we have to pass in it is open a fucking window, the command of what it has to do. So this is a constant Windows queue open. So all the constants for the Windows queue are prefixed by CSTWQ and then something. So there, in the first parameter, the window is going to know that it has to open a window. Then we are passing here the name of the window to open directly in the alias format. That is alias equal window name. So the other side will just have to do an open sister of that value. At that point, we don't know how many extra parameters there are in this specific opening of window. So we are looping on the parameters occurrence of the window. We already managed the first one, which is mandatory, and it is the name of the window. So we are going through all the other one and adding them as is without setting it in any variable here, because we will change the type directly as my parameter, the index, inside the array of variant. So in there we're going to have first a string that say open a window, then a string that say alias equal name, and then it could be an index, it could be a real, it could be a string, it could be a Unicode string, it could be anything. It's a variant. That's what a variant is. Exactly to code something that is abstract, you don't know the type, you work on a variant. Once we have added everything in our array, dynamic array of variant, we are putting that in the queue. Now this function, what is extremely interesting is that this function cannot be interrupted by anything. When we are doing that, everything else in the program is waiting till the addition is properly done in the queue. That's what the queue is for. So I can call at the same hundreds of a second that from 3 different code because of a timer or whatever, one is going to be done entirely before the next one is done. And that's what the queue exactly is for. You stuff things in it anywhere, and somewhere else you use them from the beginning, and you do not have any conflict. Once that thing is in the queue, we are posting a message to the W first window, and for that post message is waiting for a handle, which is another name for a pointer. Once again, we are using 3 different names for the same thing, but that is just a fucking memory address of the window. So we are calling that, and I'm using this message number because a message is of a certain type, it has a number. 1024 is WM user. It is user message. Any message that has a number higher than that is user defined, so it's your responsibility to manage them in your application. Because I'm using only one, I'm doing +1, and then I'm passing absolutely nothing. I don't have to tell the window anything. Generally you give the recipient here information on what it's supposed to do with that. I don't have anything to tell it. Just look in the queue. That's all I'm telling it. And I'm returning the alias of the window to the calling code so that the calling code know how to work against the window. And I think it's time to stop, except if you want to continue to see the end of the process at the same time. You tell me, I can stay, whatever. And anybody against? No? Let's continue. Okay, so at that point, we send a post message. For those of you who don't know, there are 2 functions to send message in Windows, post message and send message. There is a difference between the 2. Send message, wait for the other side to answer. Post message, you're throwing something away and you're starting to run. Okay? So here I'm just doing a post message because I don't want to to wait for the window to be open. I want to continue my stuff, and the other side is going. We are working here on a completely asynchronous system. We're just putting stuff in the queue, telling the main window there's something to do, and then we're going to dance in the bar next door with the pirate and all this kind of thing. So let's look now what's happening in the W first window. It's right there. If we go inside the code, the initialization of the window right here, there is this event call, and you see that the event is just for the W first window. That's what this here means, and that is on the message number 1024 plus 1. So this is going to be activated only and if it receives a message 1024 plus 1. This is the receiver. When it receives that, it calls that function. And that function is part of my global collection of procedure of Windows management. And we're going to go into it. This is the Windows manage function. So this, remember, is what is going to say, okay, I just received a message, there is something in the queue, what do I need to do? This is what that code is. So the first thing is, of course, to get what's in the queue. And you would think that you just would do one DQ and that would be enough. But there may be several windows waiting to be open, or windows waiting to be open, windows waiting to be closed, windows waiting to be refreshed, or other things than window waiting to be done. You can use that for absolutely anything. By example, you can use that from an external program to tell the main program that there's something to do. It's really powerful. So we're doing that in a loop. I'm there. I am going to work till there's nothing else to do. Now that is one way to do that. But if there's a lot of things coming at once, it means that basically everything will be frozen till everything is done. So it may be the best way to do it, and in that case it works perfectly. It may be that you want to do 1, 2, 3 and then exit and then come back, 1, 2, 3 and then exit and then come back. Depends. You're really managing your software here. And I have something to tell you at that level. What I'm doing here, I did not invent that. That is Windows. Windows is a big loop. Windows is waiting for events. Windows is waiting for messages, and Windows is going exactly that. So when you're doing that, you're just doing what any C programmer would do inside a window: intercept the list of events of the window, manage this, manage that. All that is hidden by WinDev, but that is the normal way, low-level way of working in Windows. So let's DQ our thing. Here we are declaring once again an array of variants, and we are getting the content of the queue in it. At that point, I have in here the whole array of variants that was sent to me. Now, if the result of that is false, it means that, well, previous time I was here, I did open 3 windows, and now there are more post message arriving, too late, already done, so I ignore them. That's all. So, and what I'm telling you is basically what you can read by yourself. Here we do have an array of variants with all the window params information. I'm trying really to comment all the things at the logical level. We are going to first check what is the requested operation. And to do that, I created a constant called CSTWQ requested operation, which is 1. Because the first parameter of my array of variant is always going to be the requested operation. Why did I do that with a constant? It's the first one, it's always going to be the first one. Well, maybe not. Maybe I will need later to decide that the first one is some new extra information of a higher level, and the requested operation is going to end up in second position. So in order to be sure that at that point I don't have everything to change everywhere, I'm using that, and I will just change the value of the constant if I need to. If we are requesting to open a window, this is the case we are working against, then we are going to, and that's some ugly code, and I didn't find any other way of doing that, unfortunately. We do not know how many parameters the window we're opening needs. This is depending on the number of parameters we are receiving. So I'm counting the number of parameters, and I'm removing from it everything that is not the Windows parameter itself. And then depending on that, I am going to open either a window with OpenSister without any parameter, with 1 parameter, with 2 parameter, with 3 parameter, with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 parameter, or 9. No, because the problem is that this here is what is killing us. These at that level are separate parameters. You can do that in a table add, by example, because table add has a syntax where you do colon value tab, and you can pass a whole string. However, a function does not allow this kind of thing, and because of that, you need to do this kind of ugly code, and I would really like to find a way to do something that looks like you just described. At this point, I did not find anything. Now, this is not to say that it doesn't exist, and in fact there is a way. I just thought about it. I could do it with a compile statement. Yeah, I could put all that inside a string and then compile it. In fact, there's even a new function. It's not compile, it's execute statement, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It would work. The question is, yeah, it would be just a few lines of code to add the stuff, and then only, and it would work for any number of parameters. So that is, yeah, that is a better way of doing it. So no, that's not done for that. So this is where we're doing our OpenSister with all the parameters that we received from the array of variant. And once we have opened the sister, well, because we are opening a new window, we want to refresh the list of windows that is at the bottom of our main window. You know, the list where you can click on. Well, we are going to do it inside window display list. Again, in the collection of procedure. If we have received a request to close a window, well, we are doing basically the same thing. Now, the difference is that a close function can not contain the name of the window. It can be, when you're doing close, the syntax of a close is close my window or close empty string. And it means current window. I did not want to change the syntax so that somebody would have to forcibly state the name of the window, so that you could just somewhere say window close, the same way you do a close. So I accept also the number 0 at that point, and I'm managing it that way. Now, when doing a close, we are not doing a Windows display list here because we did it in the calling code. As soon as I request the close, I remove it from the list so that nobody can touch anything before it is closed. Just a trick I found, otherwise wouldn't work. Now let's have a look at that one. Perhaps we can wait for that for tomorrow. I don't want to keep anybody too late because I know that some people have things to do. Continue? Not continue? Tomorrow? Tomorrow. Tomorrow? Okay. So we'll reconvene tomorrow, and we need to remember that we want to look at Windows display list. I am having a lot of senior moments this week, so please remember for me.